What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir Technologies, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of tomorrow's trading day, Tuesday, January 30th. Well, Palantir stock here today up 4.5%, continuing to rise after hours as we head into tomorrow's big tech earnings day. Let's take a look at this on a variety of time frames. First of all, here on the 1 minute chart, we have some big movement. Now, I think it's better if we look at this on the 5 minute and look at volume. Okay, take a look at this with me. So we have this big morning pump immediately off the open. See that high volume? That's a good thing to see. Of course, not out of the ordinary off the open, but then you see this pullback, this midday pullback. We saw this on Tesla too when we just did the Tesla video. You saw a lot lower volume, and then as you see the stock reverse and head up into the close, you again saw that volume increase. Now listen, is it out of the ordinary to see high volume off the open, high volume on the close? No, right? But there's a very clear correlation here with the movement of the stock and the volume in the name, okay? That's a good thing to see. I mean, if you're a bull, I suppose if you're a bear, that's not, the best thing you'd want to see today on your Monday. But truthfully, if you're seeing a move in your favor, whether you're bullish and looking for it to go up, or bearish, you're looking for a downside move, you always want the highest possible volume on moves that are in your favor, really on any time frame. Big sample size of the market is agreeing with your bias, right? And when the stock pulls back, let's say you're bullish, the stock pulls back on super low volume, that move is occurring based on the opinion of a much smaller sample size of market participants. That's a good thing if you're bullish. What you don't want if you're a bull is a stock tanking on massive volume, because that shows a huge sample size of market participants agree with the stock being lower. So let's move on here now. Let's look at the 30-minute chart and start getting some context as far as indicators go. So we have here the 50-period moving average, right? And the 200-period moving averages. You can see that compared to Friday's trading day, we reclaimed both of them here on the 30-minute. Now understand the 30-minute is just one piece of the pie, one piece of the puzzle here. We're always watching more than one time frame. Ideally, we want as many things lining up in our favor on as many time frames as possible. As a multi-day trader. And looking here at the 30-minute chart, reclaiming both of those in a single day when they weren't particularly close to each other, I mean, that is a good sign. Of course, a 74-cent move isn't a tiny move for Palantir, but it does tend to be a more volatile name. So moving forward here, you can see that we did hesitate early this morning, ahead of about an hour after the open, actually, ahead of that 200 period. We faded back, not quite to the 50, and then ripped up and rocketed through there, moving higher, of course, through after hours. That's a relatively good sign. So again, looking ahead to tomorrow, I'm going to have my eye on this specifically 200 period moving average on the 30-minute chart. Again, watching all the time frames, but on the 30-minute, I'm watching that 200 period just below 17. Ideally, this will pop above 17, and then we'll have one of those kind of double whammy round number and technical levels, with that technical level slightly ahead of that 17, acting as a potential safety net area of support. And if we do see a retest, I'll be watching to see if this is able to hold as support. If you're bearish, you want to see a rip down beneath. If you're bullish, you want to see a bounce up out of that hole, respecting it as such, if we see a test to begin with. So let's look ahead here and take a look at the 4 hour. Now, this is where things get interesting here. Take a look. The moving averages on this time frame have been incredibly relevant. This 50 period, very relevant in this region, incredibly relevant back in this region. The 200 period, incredibly relevant in this region. So look here, tomorrow, the 200 period here on the 4 hour is sitting right now at about 1735. We're 9 cents away, okay? That 50 period on the 4 hour is sitting right about 1678 approximately. So we're now forming a channel here on the 4 hour. If you're a bull, ideally getting above that 200 period, maybe even back testing it, that's fine. Maybe a low volume intraday pullback to test that, testing it, respecting it as support, bouncing up out of that hole, making our way up towards 1750, maybe beyond. That'd be a wonderful bullish scenario tomorrow. If you're a bear, rejecting off that would be a beautiful thing to see, getting down beneath 17. Even better, making our way down toward that 50 period. That would be a great scenario if you are bullish here, or sorry, if you are bearish here on Palantir. Okay, let's take a look at the daily chart here. So here we have a pretty interesting scenario. So we have that 18.25 level that we've had drawn for quite a while here on the name. The 50-day moving average, and again the 200-day moving average, the gray line's the 200, the white line's the 50. These are the two most popular technical levels, technical indicators, let's say, likely in the world for any institution, any fund, any retail investor or retail trader looking at the daily chart on Palantir. You know, certainly more than half of them likely have these two indicators on their chart, and that may be it. These are the only two I have on my daily chart, you know, aside from volume and implied volatility at the bottom there, because these two are the biggest self-fulfilling prophecies on the daily chart, and that's all I'm interested in here. So, from where the stock currently sits, okay, well, where are we after hours here? About 17.25. Okay, so if we zoom in, we find ourselves currently, because the daily chart's not really going to reflect after hours, about 17.25. From where we currently stand, that 50-day is a little under 3%. So a repeat of today would likely put us actually, which is interesting, from 17.25 approximately, if this after hours move holds through pre-market, we'll just assume. We're about 5.5% away from that 18.25 and about 3% away from that 50-day moving average. A repeat of today would put us between the two. As a bull, I really don't know if you can ask for much more than that, but hey, if you're bearish here, if we see a test of that, you'd ideally want to see a rejection. If we don't make a test of it at all, the next level really to look at, you know, 16, you could argue is a psychological level. Through there, you're looking at that 200-day, but understand that's nearly a 10% downside move away. So, you know, ideally you'd probably be looking more at 16 in the near term. That's really the closest level, and even that is over 6% away. We are in just the slightly upper end of this channel. We're not quite in the middle. We're not quite splitting the difference between the 200 and the 50. But it is worth noting that 16 in recent time has acted as a pretty substantial level of support. So again, if you're bullish or if you're bearish, 16 is an area to watch, and the same goes for that 50-day. Just going to depend on whether you're bullish or bearish, which outcome you would obviously desire upon a test of either of those. Now, let's zoom a little bit back out and get context for implied volatility. Take a look here. Just understand that IV, if you want to compare it to like the last 6 weeks or so, it is elevated from the high 40% range, about 48%, to about 76%. So if you have bought options, let's say you bought options 4 to 6 weeks ago, you have seen some IV pump that has benefited you. And if you're buying options currently, with any time frame, I'm going to say like more like 2 weeks out, well, really like 1 week out, all the way out to maybe 2 months out, anywhere within that range, just understand that you are paying a little bit of a Vega, an IV premium, and you potentially run a slightly higher risk of a little bit of IV crush if this IV decides to return to that, you know, 6 to 8 week equilibrium range, which would currently be, you know, somewhere just below 70%, let's say. Somewhere between 60 and 70%, right? Depending on how you average that out. Let's finish up here by looking at the options chain, see what the traders are thinking for today. And this is heavily biased. Now, this is not uncommon on Palantir. This is the craziest chart I've seen, or options chain more so I've seen all day today. I've looked at many stocks today. So look at this here, 74% calls today, about 26% puts, with a good sample size, close to 250,000 total contracts traded. That's a good sample size on Palantir. What I'm really interested in, though, look at this short-term speculation range, that 0 to 20 delta range, right? Those are going to be those gambly style contracts, the short-term speculators, you know, out of the money, usually really short-dated. 72,000 calls in that range compared to 19,500 puts. That is a ridiculous ratio. So not only is this ratio bullish when you look at the overall call per ratio, but it's also a bullish ratio when you look, it's a very bullish ratio when you look at that short-term speculation delta range. Just understand though that, you know, 72,000 calls, 19,500 puts, that's not the biggest sample size, but listen, I'll take it. You know, you could have had a big trader come in here and buy 40,000, 50,000 short dated out of the money calls. But once you start getting into that 72,000 range, that does become increasingly unlikely that you had one big trader come in and throw it off that much. And by the way, I watch Palantir's chain every single day. This is not uncommon at all to see on Palantir. It's a very, very biased stock when it comes to the derivatives, the options chain. But as always, keep in mind, listen, this is the market, and the masses here can be wrong. This is just the raw data that they're telling us here today. Listen, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.